Hi, welcome to the Gemara on Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. This is a review video, a brief one because I lost my voice, and we're beginning right where the Gemara begins after the Mishnah on Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. Minahani milei. The Gemara begins just with a question. From where are these words? And if you look at Rashi, he tells you that specifically we're asking from where are these words? Mafreya lo yatsa, that you can't read the Megillah out of order. How do we know that specific fact? Amar Rava, here's the first answer. To Amar Kra kichtavam v'chizmanam, because the pasuk in Megillah Esther says, like the way they're written and like their times. This pasuk, Esther 9:27, Kimu v'kiblu hayudim alehem v'al zaram v'al kol hanevim alehem v'lo yavor liyot osim et shnehem ima ela kichtavam v'chizmanam. They agreed to keep the holiday as it is written and in its times, in each and every year. So the inference from here is mazmanam mafreya af ktavam mafreya. So we have this ma'af, right, just as, so too. So just as you can't have times out of order, so too you can't write the Megillah out of order. And Rashi makes this clear, it's impossible to ever have the 15th before the 14th, so you can't have time out of order. So too you can't have the writing of Megillah out of order. Mite kriya ktiva hacha? Is this about reading? Writing is what it says here. Asiya ktiva. Doing is actually what's written here. This is a challenge to that first answer, dichtiv. Liyot osim et shnei hayamim ha'ela, because that pasuk says this is when they agreed to keep those 2 days, to commemorate those 2 days. It's not about writing and reading at all. Ella mehacha. Rather, it comes from here, meaning this is a second answer to the question. We've rejected Rava's answer. So here's another answer. Tichtiv v'hayamim ha'ela nizkarim v'na'asim. As it says, these days were mentioned and observed. Idkash zechira la'asiya. So zechira, mentioning, was connected to doing. Ma'asiya l'mafreya lo, af zechira l'mafreya lo. Just as you can't do it out of order, again, the performance of the mitzvot can't be out of order, so too the mentioning of it can't be out of order. Tana, we learn in a Braita, v'chen b'halal, v'chen b'kriyat shema, u'v'tfilah. This is also the case that you can't read out of order. This also applies to halal, kriyat shema, and tfilah, which is a reference to the Shemona Esrei. Halal minalan. So how do we know that this is true about halal? How do we know that it's true that you can't read halal out of order? This is a question word, of course. Rabba Amar, this is answer number 1. Tichtiv mizrach shemesh ad mevo'o. This is a verse that's in Tehillim and also used in halal, from the time that the sun rises till it sets. So Rashi makes it clear, mizrach shemesh ad mevo'o. Kishem sheshkiyat v'zrichat chama lo yafchu, kach mehulal shem Hashem v'lo l'mafreya. So just as you can't, if the sun sets and then it rises, you can't take that out of order, so too you can't ever change the order of the praise of God. Rav Yosef Amar, here's answer number 2, Zeh hayom asa Hashem. Also from Tehillim and from Halal. This is the day that God has made, so similar argument where you can't have the day out of order. Rav Avia Amar, answer number 3, Yehi Shem Hashem Mevarach. Also, Tehillim and Halal, God's name should be blessed, should always be blessed. And I think I didn't put the Rashi here on here, but Rashi says, Yehi Shem Hashem Mevarach, Keviyato Yeheh Halul, Hashem Ubirchato Kesidro. So just as the word Yehi here, just as God's name and God's praise, God's name is what it is, and so too God's praise is what it is and cannot be changed. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, the Itema Rav Acha bar Yaakov Amar. So it was either Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak or Rav Acha bar Yaakov gives another answer. Mehacha, so colon over here, Me'atav ad olam. The continuation of that pasuk, Me'atav ad olam, from now until forever. So again, God is a constant. God proceeds as a constant, and so too, God is always meant to be praised in the same way, and it can never be done out of order. Going back to the Breita, Kriyat Shema, so what's up with Kriyat Shema not being read out of order? Titania, as we learned in the Breita, Kriyat Shema kichtava, Tivrei Rebbe. Kriyat Shema has to be read as it is written, meaning in Hebrew, and those are the words of Rebbe. That's the opinion of Rebbe. The Chachamim omrim b'chol Hashem. And the rest of the rabbis say that it can be said that Shema can be recited in any language. Now, of course, this doesn't directly address the question of reading it out of order, but we are going to get there in the conversation about this Breita. And I'll put this Breita in red because it is a Breita. Okay. My time is a Rebbe, so the Gemara wants to know what's Rebbe's reasoning. Why does he say that you have to read it as it's written? Amar Kra, because the pasuk says, skip down to there, Vehayu. Vehayu hadvarim ha'ela. That's in Shema, in Varim in Shema. So Beheviatan They have to be as they are. And Rashi makes this clear. B'lashon hakodesh. Right? If it says it has to be as it is, that means it has to be kept consistently in Hebrew. V'Rabbanan my taima, and Rabbanan, what's their reason for saying that that it can be read in any language? Amar Kra, Shema, because the verse says the word Shema in the very beginning of Shema. It says you have to hear it. B'chol lashon she'atah shomea. So that means in any language that you can hear, meaning any language you can understand, that is the language in which you have to read it. Rebbe nami haktiv Shema. But Rebbe also, for him too, it says Shema, meaning he also has to do something with the word Shema. Hahu mibayele, so he needs that word is necessary for him. Hishama lo znacha ma she'ata motzi bipicha. You have to make heard to your ears what comes out of your mouth. That you can't just sort of whisper Shema, or you can't whisper it so softly that you wouldn't be able to hear it. You have to be able to actually hear what you say. V'Rabbanan savri kimanza amar hakorea et shma v'hushmiya lo ozno yatsa. And the rabbis hold, like the one who says, kimanza amar, like the one who says, that someone who reads Shema and doesn't make it heard to his own ear is nonetheless yotze, has nonetheless fulfilled one's obligation, meaning they don't need Shema to teach them that you have to make it audible to your own ears because they don't actually hold by that halacha. Now we're going to ask the questions in the opposite direction. V'Rabbanan nami haktiv vehayu. The rabbis also, for them too, it says vehayu, right? Meaning they should also have to do something with this word vehayu. Hahu mibayele shelo yikra l'mafreya. Finally, we get to the point. That word is necessary for them. The word vehayu is necessary for them because it teaches them that you can't read out of order. And shelo yikra l'mafreya, Rashi says, Alma kriyat shema l'mafreya lo. That this is actually where we learn that you can't read out of order. This is where this should say mehacha yalif tana til el tama. Right. This is how the previous tana, right, the Breita that says that you can't read Shema out of order. This is where they got it from. So we finally got into that answer. This is actually where you get the opinion that you can't read Shema out of order. Going back into the Gemara, the Rebbe shelo yikra l'mafreya minale. So Rebbe from where does he get the idea that you can't read out of order, right? Because it's not from the word vehayu, because he has a different use. He has a different use for the word vehayu. For him, it means that you have to read it in Hebrew. So how does he learn that you can't read it out of order? Midvarim hadvarim. From the words, or the contrast between the words dvarim and hadvarim. It could have just said dvarim without the hey, but it actually says hadvarim with the hey. So apparently that teaches Rebbe that you can't read Shema out of order. That's v'hayu hadvarim ha'ela. So these words these words specifically and not words that are out of order. V'Rabbanan, Dvarim Hadvarim lo mashmalahu. And for the rabbis, the distinction between Dvarim and Hadvarim lo mashmalahu, it holds no meaning for them. They don't learn anything in particular from that difference. Lema kasava Rebbe kol haTorah kula b'chol lashon ne'emra. So lema, one can say, or should one say, that Rebbe thinks that the whole Torah was said in every language. Why would you think that? Because if you were to think that it was said in Hebrew, then why would I have to say v'hayu? Then why do we need v'hayu specifically for Shema? In other words, if the whole Torah is in Hebrew, then why do we have to specify, if the whole Torah were in Hebrew, then why would we have to specify that specifically Shema should be in Hebrew? Then the whole Torah would have to stay in Hebrew. So it must be, based on this logic, it must be that that Rebbe thinks that the whole Torah was said in, b'chol lashon, right? It could be said in any language, but just that Shema has to be said in Hebrew. B'chol lashon ne'emra, Rashi says, likrota b'chol lashon. It can be read in any language. V'lachen yitzrich b'kriyat Shema v'hayu. And that's why it had to say specifically b'kriyat Shema v'hayu, because it must be that Rebbe thinks that the whole rest of the Torah you can read in any language. And v'hayu is singling out Shema for special treatment. But the Gemara is going to reject that idea. Itzrich, no, it was necessary to say v'hayu. Sakataytach Shema kirabanan. It's necessary because you might have thought that Shema means what the rabbis think it means. Right? The rabbis think that Shema means that it can be recited in any language. I'll put a comma there actually. Katav Rachmana v'hayu. And therefore, the Torah says, right, Katav Rachmana is God wrote or the Torah wrote, v'hayu. Right? Specifically because the word Shema appears in Shema, that might have pushed you to think that Shema Dafka can be read in any language, right? The whole rest of the Torah, of course, has to be read in Hebrew, but Shema, maybe you think specifically, can be read in any language, so because it has to be heard. So the Torah tells you, no, v'hayu, they have to stay in Hebrew. Lema kasavre rabbanan kol haTorah b'lashon hakodesh ne'emra. So now we have the challenge question going in the other direction. So should we say, or are we going to say, that the rabbis think that the whole Torah has to be read specifically in Hebrew? Because if they think that the whole Torah should be in Hebrew, then why, it could be in any language, then why did it have to say Shema specifically? Meaning, again, same question, opposite direction. If the whole Torah can be said in any language, why would we specify Shema being read in any language? It must mean that they think that the whole rest of the Torah can only be read in Hebrew, but it's Dafka Shema that can be read in any language. Itzrich, no, we're going to reject that assumption as well. It's because you might have said v'hayu kiRebbe, right? You might have interpreted v'hayu the way Rebbe does, meaning that Shema can only be read in Hebrew. Katzav Rachmana Shema, and therefore the Torah had to write Shema, which means, according to them, that Shema can be recited in any language. In other words, this last piece of the Gemara plays with the idea of whether Shema is in fact distinct from the rest of the Torah. Is it the case either that Shema has to be read in Hebrew, and that means that the rest of the Torah can be read in any language, and we say, no, you can't draw that inference. And then we ask in the other direction, is it the case that Shema Dafka can be read in any language, but the whole rest of the Torah can only be read in Hebrew? And we say, no, you can't make that inference. So there's a rejection of trying to assume anything about the rest of the Torah from what we know about reading Shema. And at this point, we've also answered the question as to how we know that Shema cannot be read out of order. We'll stop here.